Hello, my name is Nicolas, and today I would like to show you how to set up and play Maatatahay. Maatatahay is a two-player abstract game where players go head-to-head as leaders of one of two rival tribes. You will be gathering crystals, gaining relics and placing your troops on the battlefield. The game is designed by Wei Mao and Kudos Chou and it's published by Compound iFox Studio. A copy of the game was provided to me by the publisher to help me teach you Maatatahay. Welcome to the world of Maatatahay, a world that contains mysterious crystals. These powerful crystals can provide energy to all creatures living on this planet. To continue mining and using this mysterious force, different species have formed tribes and started a war among each other to claim as much of this land and crystals for themselves as they can. You are the leader of one of the two strongest tribes that now face each other in this newly discovered land. These tribes are the Balan and the Wadzu tribe. You will place warriors on the battlefield, fight your opponent and try to collect crystals and shrine relics. Your surviving warriors and gathered shrine relics will score you points at the end of the game. Let's first take a look at some of the game components before I teach you how to set up the game. First things first, the battlefield. This is the world of Maatatahay. On this game map you can see three different areas. In the middle you can see the barren area. These four areas on the outside of the map are called the grassland areas. They each have this grass symbol. In each of the four corners you have a woods area. This area has a tree symbol. Each of these areas consists of one or more spaces, and on a space you can put one of your warrior tiles. This small symbol is a crystal niche. At the start of the game you will place crystals on each niche. On the side you see the crystal storage area. There is one for each player. During the game you will be able to store up to 4 crystals in this area. Speaking of these crystals, in the game you will find two types of crystals. These purple crystals are energy crystals. You will use these to make your warriors stronger. These clear cubes are spirit crystals. You will place these on warriors to score more points with your warriors at the end of the game. And you will also use these to offer at a shrine to get a shrine relic. This is a shrine relic. These will be placed on the map at the beginning of the game. On the opposite side of the crystal storage area, you can find a spirit track. Each time a warrior dies on the battlefield, you will move this marker one space up. Each player has an acquired relic track in front of him. Each time that you acquire a relic, you will place it along this track. You can see the arrow here, so you will place the first relic that you gather on this spot. If later during the game you gather another relic, you will place it next to your first one. These will score you points at the end of the game. The last thing you see on the map are these arrow symbols. You will also see these on some of the warrior tiles. These are called supporting arrows. These will support your warriors and make them stronger. Speaking of these warriors, let's take a closer look at the warriors of the Balan and the Wadzu clan. At the start of the game, you will choose one of these two warrior tribes. All warrior tiles in the Balan clan are red and have this flame symbol on their back. The Wadzu clan has blue tiles and show you this W symbol on their back. Each tribe has the same number and type of warriors. Let's take a closer look at the warrior tile. This is a warrior of the Wadzu clan. Each warrior has two values, strength and sanity. You can tell a warrior's strength by the amount of claws he has. Each claw represents one strength, so this warrior has 2 strength. On the forehead of a warrior you can see these gem symbols. These resemble the warrior's sanity. At the end of the game, each surviving warrior will give you victory points equal to the amount of gems on its forehead. So in this case, this warrior would score me 2 points at the end of the game. During the game you will be able to place crystals on your warriors to raise their strength using these purple crystals, these energy crystals, and score more victory points by placing spirit crystals on them. So now this warrior has a strength of 3 by adding the purple energy crystal, and it would score me 3 instead of 2 points by adding this spirit crystal. I will show you how and when you can do this later during the explanation. I already showed you this supporting arrow, and I'll explain how it works during the game, but I can already show you that when during a later turn you would place an ally next to this tile here would give support to the new warrior, and I would be able to add 1 strength crystal, 1 energy crystal to this new warrior tile. This is a complete army. As I already told you, both tribes have the same amount and type of warriors. These 7 warriors have a number of strength, sanity and support arrows. Each warrior has at least 1 of each. Together with this support warrior, they are the backbone of your army. The support warrior does exactly what his name says. He can give other warriors strength, because he has support arrows pointing in all directions. But he has no strength of his own. He has no claw symbols. Here are your champion and your berserker. They both have a lot of strength, a lot of claw symbols, but they offer no support to other warriors. And they also don't have a lot of victory points to score you at the end of the game. The Convert and Elder Warrior are the last 2 warriors in your army. They both have the maximum amount of sanity that you can find on any warrior tile. They have 4 gems on their forehead, so if they survive the end of the battle, they will score you 4 victory points each. You will notice that they don't have any normal support arrows, but they each have a clan symbol. I will show you in detail how this happens when I show you how to play the game, but I can already tell you that your Convert will show you the symbol of the opposite clan. Your Elder has support arrows that show you your own clan symbol. So I think it's about time to set up the game. There are 2 ways that you can set up the game. First, I will show you how to perform setup for your first few games. Once you feel comfortable with the basics of Maatatahay, you can move on to the standard setup, which I will show you at the end of this explanation when we take a look at the standard game. First, you place the game mat between both players, so that each player is facing a relic track. Place the spirit marker on the first space of this spirit track. Place 1 spirit and 1 energy crystal in each of the player's crystal storage. Then put 13 spirit crystals and 13 energy crystals into the bag and give it a good shake. Place the rest of the energy crystals in a supply next to the board. To place these shrine relics on the board, you can use one of the suggested setups from the rulebook. For our game, I will use this setup. Next, you draw crystals from the bag and put a crystal on each of these crystal niche spaces that doesn't have a shrine relic on it. Then place the bag with the remaining crystals next to the game map. Now each player chooses 1 tribe, and finally finish this part of setup by tossing the active player token to determine the start player. In this case, it's the Balan player who will start the game. To complete setup, we will create what's called the tile stream. When we took a closer look at the warriors in your tribe, I showed you the 8 basic warriors and the 4 special warriors. You now take these 8 warriors and you divide them in 2 equal stacks. Take the Convert and Elder tile and shuffle them into one of these 2 stacks. Next, you take the Berserker and your Champion tile and you shuffle these together with the second stack of warriors. And you place it face down on top of the previously created stack. After you have done this for both tribes, you place both stacks next to the game mat and you reveal 3 warrior tiles for each tribe. Place the active player token next to the stacks, and now we are finally ready to start playing. The game will be played over a maximum of 12 rounds. Each round has the same structure. First, the active player will pick a pair of warriors. 1 Balan warrior and 1 Wazoo warrior. Now, turn order would be decided, and each player will place his warrior on the map, possibly causing a settlement to happen. If any warrior died, you will advance the spirit track. If the end of the game has not been triggered, you would now prepare for the next round, and at the end of the game you will score points for surviving warriors, collected spirit crystals on warriors, and acquired relics. So let's start by picking a pair of warriors. The active player chose a set of warriors, one Balan and one Wazoo warrior. These will be the warriors that each tribe will place on the map this round. Now take a look at the strength of each warrior. The leader of the clan whose warrior has the weaker strength in the pair chooses who will play their first tile. So in this example we have the Balan warrior, he has 2 strength, and Wazoo warrior, he has 5 strength. The Balan warrior is the starting player, he chose this pair, and he has the warrior with the least strength, so now he can choose who will place his tile first. So maybe he wants to place his tile first, so he would pick his tile and place it on the map, and then the Wazoo player will place his tile after mine. First you will choose a space for your warrior. Then you can change the direction of your warrior, and after that your warrior can receive strength from any support arrows that point at him. This can come from allies or from arrows pointing at him from the side of the map. After that you check if you have triggered the ability of any special warriors, and at the end of your placement you can choose to enhance the hot tile with crystals from your own storage. If by placing your warrior any warriors are now completely surrounded, you will settle, fight for their place. Let's take a look at each of these steps in detail. And start by choosing a space to place your warrior. When you choose a space on the map, you can encounter 2 possibilities. You can choose a free space. This is a space without another warrior or a shrine relic. Or you can visit this shrine and first offer to the temple to take the shrine relic before placing your tile there. Let's start by choosing a free space on the map. If I place my warrior tile here, there is nothing here, so I can place it, and if I want, I can then rotate it. If I want to place my warrior here on this free space, if it has a crystal, you first take that crystal and put it into your crystal storage, and then you can place your tile and rotate it if you want. To show you how you can visit a shrine and obtain the relic, I will show you a different setup of the map of a situation a bit later during the game. So if I want to place my tile on one of these spaces that contains a shrine relic, I will have to make an offering to the shrine, but then I will be able to collect the shrine relic and place it on my track. During this basic version of the game, each time when you gather a shrine relic, you will place it in the shrine relic track. The standard offering is 4 crystals. All crystals that you offer must come from your crystal storage, and each offering must include at least 1 spirit crystal. However, there is a way to pay less crystals. For each warrior that is orthogonally adjacent to the shrine, the cost is reduced by 1. These warriors can belong to either tribe. Each offering must still contain at least 1 spirit crystal, and even if the shrine has 4 warriors adjacent, you must still pay at least 1 spirit crystal. So, if I want to visit this shrine to gather this relic before placing my tile, the cost would be reduced by 1 because there is 1 warrior orthogonally adjacent to this shrine. So it would cost me 3 crystals to go here, and one of those crystals must be a spirit crystal. So I could pay 2 energy crystals and 1 spirit crystal to place my tile here on this space while gathering this shrine relic. To take this shrine relic before placing my tile there, I would pay 2 crystals, because the normal cost of 4 crystals is reduced by these 2 orthogonally adjacent warriors, and again, one of those 2 crystals must be a spirit crystal. And here in the middle of the map, you have a shrine that's surrounded by 4 warriors. The cost would be reduced and will be reduced by 4, so I would pay no crystals, but again, the rule is that when you visit a shrine, even if it's completely surrounded by warriors, you still have to pay 1 spirit crystal. So I would pay 1 spirit crystal from my storage to place my tile here, but then I would be allowed to place the shrine relic onto my track. Each time when you collect a shrine relic, you can take 2 crystals from the bag as a reward. You place these crystals in your crystal storage. On the side of the board you can see this symbol to remind you of this rule. So after you placed your warrior on the map, you can still rotate it in any direction that you want. It's important that you know that the tile that you placed on the map is called the hot tile. This matters because now you add strength to the hot tile for each support arrow that is pointing at the hot tile. In this case, we have 1, 2, 3 arrows pointing at our hot tile. So this means I can now add 3 energy crystals from the supply to this tile. The arrows on the hot tile can never give strength to other warriors. Later during the game, maybe if this tile wasn't here and I would place it now, this arrow would also be able to give strength to the newly placed tile. As I told you during the explanation of the symbols on the game map, you see that this is also a support arrow. So if I would have placed my warrior on this tile, I would first remove this crystal, place my tile. I'm allowed to rotate it, so maybe it can give support to warriors that I will place later on the map. And now I will add strength for each supporting arrow. And in this case, I have 1 supporting arrow from an ally, but I also have 1 supporting arrow from the board itself. So I would place 2 crystals, 2 energy crystals, onto my warrior. Let's now see how this supporting mechanism would work during the game. If I am the Wadzu leader, I could first place my tile here on this space. Look, it's a free space, so I would first gather the crystal that's on it, place my tile on this space, and I can rotate it. I would now add strength from any supporting arrows that are pointing to the hot tile, so I have 1 of these arrows from the board that's pointing at my support warrior. So I would add 1 strength crystal to my tile. During another round, I want to place this warrior. I want to place it on this space, so first I collect the crystal and then I place it on its spot, but I choose to turn it and rotate it in this way. Next step, again, gathering energy from any supporting arrows that are pointing at my hot tile. We have 1 here from the edge of the board and 1 from the warrior that we placed during a previous turn. As a third tile, I want to place this warrior. And I place it over here, and I choose to rotate it this way after I've placed it on the map. Any support arrows will now give me extra strength on this warrior tile, and I have 1 supporting arrow that is pointing directly at him. So again, adding 1 crystal to its strength. And maybe as another tile, I want to place this warrior. And again, I will add strength from any support arrows pointing at it, and I have 1 from this warrior, 1 from this one, and 1 from this one. So this is now a warrior that has 4 strength and 3 sanity. So it would score me 3 points at the end of the game if it survives the battle. If the hot tile is one of the 2 special warriors, the Elder or the Convert, or you place the hot tile adjacent to them, something special could now happen. The placement could trigger the special warrior's ability. As I told you at the start of the video, these 2 special warriors get their strength from other warriors and support arrows. Let's start with the Elder. The Elder has 4 sanity, but no strength. If you take a closer look, you will notice that while he doesn't have any normal support arrows, he has its clan symbol on each of the 4 sides of the tile. Each orthogonally adjacent ally will grant the leader 1 strength. This ability can also be triggered by warriors that already died, and it can be triggered when you place it as the hot tile, or if you place a hot tile that triggers its ability during a later turn. The Convert also has 4 sanity and no strength, but he will gain strength from his enemies. That's why he has the enemy symbol, the symbol of the other clan, in each of its corners. Each diagonally adjacent enemy will give the Convert 1 strength. Just like with the Elder Warriors, this ability can also be triggered by a dead adjacent enemy. Let me show you how this would work during the game. I want to place my Convert on this space. It gains support from any support arrows pointing at it. We have 2 support arrows pointing at our convert, one from this warrior and one from this warrior. Remember, after we have dealt with the support arrows, we now check if one of these special warriors' abilities is triggered. Here you have a Balan warrior. It is adjacent to our convert, so this would also add a strength to our convert. Since the special warrior's ability can be triggered even later during the game, if this tile was not here, and later the Balan player would place one of his warriors here, after dealing with support arrows, this enemy would now activate his special ability and provide the enemy with 1 extra strength. The same is true for this Elder special warrior. If I place it here, I would gather the crystal, place my warrior, first deal with support arrows. There's one pointing at me from the board. There's one pointing at the Elder from this warrior, so this would add 2 strength. And then it would activate the special abilities of this warrior, because he gathers strength from any allies that are close to him. There's one ally here, so this would add another strength. And there's one ally here. Each time when the state of the special warrior's strength changes, this will trigger a settlement for any adjacent enemies. We will see how this works when you take a closer look at settlement. But before we do that, we have one last step that we can take after we have placed our warrior on the board. During this final step, you can place any number of crystals from your crystal storage on the hot tile. Energy crystals will raise its strength. Spirit crystals will raise the amount of victory points that the warrior is worth at the end of the game if he survives the battle. It's also good to know that at the end of your turn, you can never have more than 4 crystals in your supply. So now might be a good time to choose any crystals and place them on the hot tile. So I could add 1 energy or maybe 2 spirit crystals to raise its point value up till 3, or maybe raise its strength to 5 by adding these crystals. After this placement step, when you have placed warriors of rival tribes so close to each other, sooner or later a fight will break out, and this is what you check during the settling of life and death phase after placing your warrior. If by placing a warrior on the map, a warrior is orthogonally completely surrounded, a siege will happen. I am the Balan player, and I can place my tile here, my warrior, so now I can rotate the tile in any direction that I want, but I want to leave it like this. Next step would be looking at support arrows. 1 support arrow is pointing at the hot tile, so this arrow gives 1 strength to the warrior. After this, we will check if any special warriors' abilities will be triggered. There are no special warriors at this moment, so we can skip this step. And as we've seen as a last step during your placement, you can now enhance this hot tile with crystals from your crystal storage. So you could add 1 strength from your crystal storage to this warrior. By placing this warrior, the Wazoo support tile is now completely surrounded. So settlement for this space will take place. You now compare the strength of the surrounded warrior, this being the sum of its claws and energy crystals, with the strength of all enemy warriors that are orthogonally surrounding him. The surrounded warrior has 2 strength because of these 2 energy crystals. The surrounding warriors, they have 8 strength. If the defender has a strength that is greater or equal than the enemy's, he survives. If not, like in this case, he dies. At the moment when a warrior dies, you will flip the tile face down and you return any energy crystals that were on the tile back to the supply. If there were any spirit crystals on the tile that didn't survive, they are now looted by the other tribe and placed on the hot tile that caused the settlement. Each time when a warrior dies, you move the spirit track marker 1 space on this spirit track. If you would reach the last space on this track, the game will end at the end of that round. Settlement happens each time when a warrior is completely surrounded by other warriors, but it doesn't always take 4 warriors for an enemy to be completely surrounded. If a warrior is on the edges or in the corner of the game map, placing a tile adjacent to this warrior now would mean that this warrior is also completely surrounded, and a settlement would take place. The same is true for this Wazoo warrior. When a tile would be placed here, it is now completely surrounded, and again a settlement would take place. If by placing your tile multiple warriors are fully surrounded, then multiple places will need to be settled. The current player, who played the hot tile, decides the order of settlement, but the hot tile will always be the last one to be settled. With this example, I can show you how multiple settlements would work. You are the Wazoo player and you want to place your convert warrior over here. He now gets strength from any support arrows that are pointing at your hot tile. Your warrior gains 1 strength from the other ally here and another one from the ally here. In the next step, you trigger the ability of special warriors. As it happens, you are placing your convert, who is a special warrior, next to your other special warrior, your elder. So now both their abilities will be triggered. Let's start with the elder. He gains strength from adjacently placed allies, so here he gains 1 strength. Because you change his strength, this could trigger settlement with already settled adjacent enemies, but that is not the case here. The convert itself gains strength from any diagonally placed enemies. As you can see, there are 2 enemies that are diagonally adjacent to our convert, so again we would add 2 strength from his special ability. As a last step, you now have the chance to enhance the hot tile that you placed with crystals from your storage, but you decide not to do so. By placing this Wazoo warrior here, we have 3 warriors that are completely surrounded. We have this Balan warrior and these 2 Wazoo warriors. The active player, the Wazoo player, now decides the order in which we will settle these settlements, but the hot tile, the one that he just placed, will be settled last. So maybe you choose to settle the Balan warrior first. The Balan warrior has a strength of 3, while the surrounding enemies, they have a total strength of 13. This means that you flip the Balan tile face down. The energy crystal is returned to the supply, and the spirit crystal will be placed on the hot tile. Next up is your tribe's special warrior. That's the elder. He has a strength of 1 and his surrounding enemies have a strength of 4. As a result of this, he dies, and again we will flip his tile face down, placing the energy crystal in the supply and placing the spirit crystal on the hot tile. The last space that we need to settle is this space. It's our convert. But as you can see, there are no more enemy tiles that are orthogonally adjacent to him, so he's safe, and his space doesn't need to be settled. In this last example, I would like to show you what happens when you trigger a special warrior's ability by placing a warrior adjacent to him, and how this can result in settlements of spaces that are not adjacent to the hot tile. These 2 Balan warriors survived the settlement during one of the previous rounds. This warrior has 3 strength, which was equal to the strength of the surrounding warriors. So in this case, when the strength is equal, the defender wins and he survived. The same goes for this other warrior. He has 2 strength, which is equal to the amount of strength of the surrounding warriors. So again, he survived. However, you as the Wazoo player can still influence these spaces because of the special warrior's ability. You want to place your bravery warrior on this space. You now gain strength bonuses from supporting arrows that are pointing at you. We only have this support arrow that is pointing at my hot tile, so I will place 1 energy crystal on this warrior. During the next step, we take a look to see if they triggered the ability of a special warrior. Your elder warrior gains 1 strength from this ally that you placed next to it. As you might remember, each time when the special warrior's ability is triggered, this also triggers the settlement of any adjacent enemies that are surrounded. Even, like in this example, if they survived a settlement in a previous round. On top of that, by placing this warrior here, you also surrounded the warrior itself and the elder warrior. So that's quite a lot of settlements that we need to take care of. The active player that plays the hot tile decides the order of all the settlements, and in that order, the hot tile is always the last one that gets settled. You decide to settle this space first. Of course, the Balan warrior still has 3 strength, but because of the elder's ability, the surrounding enemies now have 4 strength. This means that it would lose this settlement. We discard the crystals to the supply, And we place the energy crystal on the hot tile. Next you want to settle this space. The Balloon Warriors survived the previous settlement because of the 2-2 situation. Again, by triggering the Elder's ability, you have gained the upper hand. You have the Balloon Warrior with still 2 strength, but you now have 3 strength. Another Balloon Warrior dies, so again the energy crystal goes to the supply, the looted spirit crystal goes to the hot tile, and the Balloon Warrior is flipped face down. Since 2 warriors died, I will move the spirit marker 2 spaces up. You would now settle the Elder space, but he no longer has any enemies that are orthogonally adjacent to him. So you move on to the hot tile. Your Wazoo warrior has a strength of 3, but he is no match for the surrounding enemies. They have a strength of 4, so you have to flip your warrior face down. And these 2 spirit crystals are lost. Now, you might have lost your warrior, but you also defeated 2 of your rival warriors. And your Elder warrior, with a victory point value of 4, is completely settled. After both players place their warriors, you would now check if the end of the game has been triggered. This can happen in 3 situations. When the spirit marker has moved to the last space on the spirit track, when there is no or only 1 free space left open on the map, or when all 24 warriors have been placed on the map. If not, you would prepare for the next round by flipping the top tile of each warrior stack face up to refill the tile stream. If there are no tiles left in the stack, you would skip this step. Then the current active player flips the active player token to the other side and you would now start a new round. If, however, the game end was triggered, you would now move on to the scoring phase. Let's take a look at this end of the game situation to calculate the points for the Wazoo player. You score points for 3 things. First, you score points equal to the number of gems on the foreheads of your surviving warriors. Second, you score 1 point for each crystal that is on top of one of your warrior tiles. And lastly, you score the amount of points that you can see on your relic track. For each relic that you have acquired, you can see the number of points that it will give you at the end of the game. In case of the Wazoo player, this would mean that he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 points. And to that he can add 1 point from a gathered relic. So this would give him 17 points at the end of the game. Of course, the player with the highest score wins the game. In case of a tie, the player with the most surviving warriors wins. In the standard game that I'll explain to you in a minute, there's a second tiebreaker. There, if there's still a tie, the player who acquired the last relic wins. If nobody acquired a relic and there is still a tie, you should perhaps play another game to settle the tie. After you have played the game a few times, you can move on to the standard game mode. The basic round structure stays the same. There are, however, a few differences during setup, and you also score the shrine relics in a different way. Let's start with the setup. After you place the game map in the middle of the table and you place the spirit marker on the first spot of the spirit track, you now put all 15 spirit crystals and 15 energy crystals into the bag, placing the rest of the energy crystals into a general supply. Now you draw crystals from the bag and put one on each of the crystal niches, just like during the basic setup. Each player now chooses a tribe, and again you toss the active player token to determine who will be the starting player. The biggest difference with the basic setup happens now. Instead of using a predetermined setup from the rulebook to place the shrine relics, the players will place these 5 relics on the map themselves. Of course, there are some rules that you need to follow. The second player in turn order will place 3 relics, so in this case this would be the Wazoo player. The starting player, the Balan player, will place 2 relics. First, the second player will place 1 relic. When you place a relic on a space, you can take all the crystals that are on that space. But watch out, because during this setup you may never collect more than 3 crystals in this way. So, if placing a relic on a space would cause you to end up with more than 3 crystals in your storage, you are not allowed to place a relic in that space. A second rule of placement is that you cannot place 2 relics orthogonally adjacent to each other. They can be placed diagonally of each other or at least 1 space apart. Maybe the second player placed his relic on this spot on the map. It's now the starting player's turn and he can place 2 relics on the map. So the first player could place one here and maybe another one here. Finally, the second player places the last 2 relics on the map. He already has 1 crystal, so he could place one of the relics here, and this would give him 3 crystals, so he can only place the other relic on a space without crystals. When setting up the tile stream, instead of preparing the stacks of warrior tiles in a certain way, you now just take all 12 warriors for each clan. You would shuffle these and place them next to the board, and again deal 3 warriors of each tribe, just like during basic setup. The game would then start and you play following the rules you already know. The only difference is that when you retrieve a relic from the board, you place it in the spot that matches the order in which you gather the relic. So if I gather my first relic, I would place it here, following the arrows. Maybe during another round, the other player also gathers a relic. He would place it not on the first spot, but on the second spot. A third relic he gathers would go on the third spot. But if I gather the fourth relic, I would be allowed to place it on this fourth spot. During scoring, each player will receive points for their relics according to the point value above their relics. So, if this was the Wazoo player's side, he would gather 6 points at the end of the game for the relics that he gathered. The Balan player would gather 5 points. This was all you need to know to set up and play Maatatahay. If you liked this video, please click the like and subscribe button. And if you want to find out more about Meeple Care, see new how to play videos, you can do so by following me on YouTube, Facebook and Instagram. This was Meeple Care, taking care of your meeple needs.